Hey, so you guys, I love your questions and I love seeing your comments. And throughout the season here, you guys have been asking, when it's fall, when it's getting towards winter, what are the things you do to your yard? Do you winterize it? How do you get ready? And I'm gonna be completely honest. I think in the fall, less is more. I don't really like to do a lot to my garden in the fall. And I think some people get way too excited and happy and think, let's trim stuff back, let's cut stuff off. Evergreens, your actual shrubbery, things that like hydrangeas and things like that, do not trim them in the fall. Just don't. Things like boxwood in the fall, if you trim them, it can spur growth. That can then winter burn over the course of those cold months. You don't really want to trim things for sure after September, but I don't even trim them in September. You could deadhead your hydrangeas if you want to, like trim the blooms off. I personally like to leave them on because they just look good throughout the winter. So I'm gonna talk about a couple things that I do. So the first thing is my peonies. I like to leave peonies going for as long as I can. If they are blooming, obviously if they're blooming. If they're still green, they are still taking in nutrients. But now they are starting to fade. We are in late October. I can't even remember. It's sometime in 2020, that's all I know. 2020 has just been a year, right? So when they start fading like this, it's time to start thinking about trimming them off. Now I could leave these until next year. And I haven't really had a problem with mildew or disease on these peonies, but they can be really prone to like powdery mildew, black spots. So I like to remove these in the fall, the green, remove it so it doesn't sit around the plant and then just compost and go back into the soil. It can sometimes promote more of that disease later on. So since peonies are prone to it, I am gonna cut them off. Now, I am someone that has been putting peony rings around them because peony rings help them stand upright. So I'm gonna first pull off these peony rings, which is probably gonna be no fun, but I'm gonna pull them off, then we'll just cut them off. So I pulled that beast off, that was a mess. I have an old pruner, it's a shears that I use for things like this. So I don't wanna use my really good shears that I use on fine pruning on boxwood or on a nice shrubbery that I give a good shape to that are sharp. I use crappy old ones that are rusty and not that good but work, because this is just kind of the dirty of the pruning. It's not like good fine pruning. Peonies, I have a peony video out there where I talk about different types. There's tree peonies, Ito peonies, and herbaceous peonies. Ito peonies and herbaceous peonies you just can cut off to the ground, they come back from the ground. Tree peonies are not like that, so I do not prune those. So I'm gonna just cut them off. It could take a few passes, because at first it's just so I can kind of see what I'm doing. Remove all that debris. There it is. You are left with just the stubs, which is great, which is perfect. And now you can see, and a lot of times I leave them probably about like that. You could cut them off lower if you wanted to. There's really no right or wrong here. I like to remember where things are, so I definitely leave a few inches just so I can remember. So boxwood, not gonna prune it. Your random perennials, you can totally prune them back if you want to, because anything that dies back and comes back from the ground, you can cut back here in the winter. I often, certain habitats can be created for maybe animals or certain things over the winter when you leave certain things, so I don't mind leaving them and then just taking them off in the spring. So a lot of things like this is lithorum, I will just probably keep here, and I'll probably move on and do some more peonies. This is a gorgeous Ito. Ito, if you don't remember, is a cross between a tree peony and an herbaceous peony. It's a little bit more stocky, beautiful, big blooms, kind of like a tree peony. I love them. They're one of my faves. What I do, I admit, sometimes like, is just how cutting things back here in the fall, it kind of just cleans everything up, gets some of that debris that's starting to look kind of sad away. So another thing I always do in the fall is kind of give my last weeding to the flower bed. Throughout the fall here, I may become complacent and don't weed as much just because, life gets in the way, right? Pumpkins be coming in, I've been putting them everywhere. So I'm getting some weeds up here in the front, and I will just go through and kind of do a last weeding, because you know what I find? This is just how nature is. But weeds survive extremely well. And even in February, sometimes I come out and guess what's green? Maybe that weed I left. So if you do a final good weeding here in the fall, in the spring, you're already ahead and don't have as much weeding you feel like. Because what's the first thing that comes up in the spring? It is those weeds. It always is. So I'm gonna do a few more here, keep weeding a little bit, and wrap it all up. So in a few minutes, you can see how it really piles up. Now, it's not completely different. The peonies are gone. A lot of the weeds I've tried to go through. I see some more I need to still get. So really what I do in the fall, some weeding, as much as you can do, because you're a head start for next year. I do take my peonies down. Why don't we trim things like hydrangeas in the fall? Well, depending on the hydrangea, that can really affect their bloom. So a lot of certain hydrangeas put on their bloom the year before, or they bloom on old wood. So when you cut them off, you're not gonna have a bloom next year. The ones that aren't like that, like the limelights or the quick fires, they're not like that. But the problem is when you trim them all the way back to the ground, sometimes it really creates them to have a little bit more stress over the winter. So it's just best to let them go throughout the winter. Let them go, don't touch them. Don't be pruning on things and trimming things. Other than things that die back to the ground, those I wouldn't worry about if you really want to clean things up. But like I said, I only do things I need to. So things that are diseased or prone to disease or mildew like these, I just like to get them out of there so they're not sitting in the bed all year. That's all I do. I don't do a lot of other things. You do not fertilize in the fall. You don't want things to go into their dormancy period trying to take in the fertilizer. That's nothing good either. So less is more in the fall. It's not too much work. It's best just to let things go dormant, then clean it up in the spring. It creates habitats. It creates less work for you and it gives you something to look at. So leave it, do a few minor things, and you should be good to go. That's some of my garden time, my perennial bed maintenance. I hope that answers some of your questions. I love when you share these around, so share them around. Check my website, wiseguide.com. There's recipes, garden tips, everything I have done on there, and more. So share it because that helps me create more videos, helps you to have more people see them, because guess what? Gardening is easy. If I can do it, we all can do it. So I'm gonna start cleaning this stuff up and probably go inside because I'm cold.